Currently, Camellya is at the top of the meta in the Tower of Adversity, and even more so in the new endgame mode, Whimpering Waste. Camellya performs best in AoE situations, but is also quite viable against single target bosses, at least at the moment. With the addition of Whimpering Waste and the need for AoE in literally every part of it, Camellya has slotted herself among the top of the meta. So let's talk more about Camellya in this updated guide in version 2.2, about how to play her and her best weapons, teams, and echoes. Let's first talk about her strengths and weaknesses. Starting with her strengths, she could devour you.
A little treat.
But her biggest strength is her ability to perform in AoE. The limit to her AoE is just the range of her mid-air spinny move, and there currently really isn't an issue with that in AoE situations. Another one of her strengths is that her team building is very free-to-play friendly, being that Sanhua is an amazing option and she's free. And that's quite nice, since Camellya would definitely take your lunch money.
Would you like a fun game between the two of us?
Her 5-star support isn't really all that better than Sanhua in terms of value. Rocha basically only adds grouping for Camellya, which isn't really needed at the moment, since enemies already start pretty close together, so once they get hit by Camellya, they usually are staggered enough to not want to move away, though she is pretty useful in Whimpering Waste with the grouping. And lastly, her nuke can also hit more than one target and does some pretty good damage. Onto her weaknesses though. This isn't really that big of one, but she isn't the greatest in single target. I mean, obviously she's an AoE unit like Gion is, but she isn't really going to be getting any better in single target. Additionally, without Shorekeeper and or her signature weapon, I feel like she has a bigger falloff than most other characters like Jinchi or Phoebe, who don't really rely on Shorekeeper as hard and also don't need their signature weapons as bad. And lastly, she doesn't want to share.
Today, you're mine and no one else's.
Now let's check out how her kit works and how to play Camellya. Camellya's kit is honestly pretty long, but don't worry, actually playing her is quite simple, so let's get into it. First, her intro skill just does some damage as an intro skill normally would. Doesn't really do that much damage, so leave it for last in terms of leveling. Her normal attack is not something she'll be using in a normal rotation, but does have an interesting heavy attack animation. Also, not very important to level. Her Resonance Liberation is just a quick burst of damage and is normally around 80 to 100k, probably depending on buffs. Just click the button, you get your animation, and it's done. Pretty simple. I recommend doing this first when you get on field, since it generates 20 Concerto for Camellya. That will be important in a later section. Now let's get into the actual part of her kit, her Resonance skill and Forte circuit. Firstly, her Resonance skill. Casting it will bring you into Blossom mode, where you will hang in the air from these vines that are attached to who knows where. Vine Waltz is basically a special sequence of attacks, which has 4 stages. By holding normal attack, there is a quick 2 hits, then you will start spinning. Then you will automatically perform the 4th and last attack. And now for the Forte circuit, which is where her nuke is. Now there is quite a bit in the description of this, so I'll just go over the main mechanics and not the strenuous details. To start off, all of these attacks, which are basically every way that Camellya deals damage, will consume Crimson Pistols, which is just when her Forte bar is bright pink, and I will refer to it as her Forte bar just generally. During this time, when her Forte bar is bright pink, her energy regen multiplier is increased by 150%. This is kind of important, since later she won't be able to gain any energy, but it balances out, so don't worry about this. Consuming 10 Crimson Pistols recovers 4 Concerto energy and 1 Crimson Bud. Generating Concerto energy is important because it is how Camellya will cast her nuke. When her Concerto energy is full, Resonance skill is replaced with Ephemeral, and now you can cast her nuke. Casting the nuke will consume 70 Concerto energy, nuke nearby enemies, and isn't just single target. This attack also is considered basic attack damage. After casting the nuke, Camellya will enter Budding mode, which has Sweet Dream, and will increase the damage multiplier of all of these attacks by 50%. Also, by casting the nuke, all Crimson Buds additionally increase Sweet Dreams multiplier by 5% up to 50%. By using up all of the bright pink in her Forte bar before you cast nuke, you will max out the Sweet Dream multiplier to 100% for all of these attacks. Now Camellya's Forte bar will be this new fancy pink with a flower on the left. With this new fancy pink Forte bar you get after casting nuke, you don't gain any Crimson Buds like you did earlier, and your energy regen multiplier is reduced to 0. Don't worry though, this doesn't matter since you won't need any more or less energy regen than any other DPS with a 125 resonance cost liberation. Buddy mode will also end when Camellya is switched off field and or when her Forte bar is fully consumed, so when this new fancy pink is gone. A final thing to note about Crimson Pistols, aka her Forte bar, is that she can hold up to 100 Crimson Pistols. She will get 100 Crimson Pistols by using intro skill and after she uses her nuke. And And lastly, her outro skill Twinning deals havoc damage based on Camellya's attack, and by default it's 329.24% of Camellya's attack, but after casting Ephemeral from her Forte circuit, which you will be doing, it will bring it up to 459.02% of Camellya's attack. Now that we have that novel out of the way, let's go through a normal rotation for Camellya. Then I will go into some tips on how to play her more effectively. First, you do your rotation with your other characters. Ideally, that would be Shorekeeper and Sanhua. Then you can intro skill onto Camellya. First, I would recommend using her Resonance Liberation, or R, to generate a quick 20 Concerto. Now you can press E to go into Blossom mode. Note you only need to do this in the first rotation, since she will stay in Blossom mode every time you switch onto her. Now you will have 100 Crimson Pistols in your Forte bar from intro skill. Now hold normal attack to consume Crimson Pistols and generate Concerto. This is where she would do all that spinny stuff. Repeat this until your Concerto is full, and the picture on her Resonance skill changes to pink. Press your Resonance skill button to use Ephemeral. Be careful though, since without S1 you aren't fully immune to interruption, and if you are interrupted, you will just enter budding mode without your nuke damage and will probably need to restart. Now that you are in budding mode and your Forte bar is full again, you can hold normal attack to spin to win, doing increased damage. Repeat until your Forte bar is empty. Then she will exit budding mode. And now swap onto your support and repeat the rotation and echo cancel if you have Dreamless. And so the biggest tip I can give you for playing Camellya is that since you don't have a lot of movement when you are in Vine mode, you want to press sprint to lunge towards the enemy so that when they move around on your next spinning move, they hopefully won't be able to get far enough away and you can land all of your hits. You'll want to hit the sprint button to kind of like swing towards the enemy and then start your spinning move again. Okay, so now that we know how to play Camellya, let's talk about her echoes. Camellya only has one good echo set, and that is the Havoc Eclipse Havoc set. Unfortunately, she didn't get any new set in Renacita, but anyways, you'll want to run the standard 4-3-3-1-1 with a crit on the 4 cost, Havoc damage on the 3 cost, and attack percent on the 1 cost. You can use attack percent on the 3 cost, but Havoc damage is better, assuming equal roll value. If your attack percent has better rolls, that should be fine. In terms of the substats you'll want, Camellya wants a standard crit build with crit rate and crit damage on all of your echoes. Next, she wants basic attack damage bonus, since that is what most of her damage is considered. And finally, attack percent and a couple energy regen rolls are fine. I personally only have 110.8% energy regen, and am not always able to use Resonance Liberation when I swap onto her, so shoot for around 120% at the least to be on the safe side. There is actually 3 different Havoc forecast echoes for this set. Nightmare Crownless is the best and can be found in Renacita. Next is Dreamless, since you can echo swap off of it, and finally the normal Crownless in Huanglong that you should only use if it has double crit stats. Camellya's signature weapon is one of the more unique ones, and in a really good way for her. Most signature weapons, of a DPS that is, will grant up to 48% of the damage bonus that they scale with. For Gion, that's heavy attack damage bonus, and for Jinshi, that's a resonant skill damage bonus. In Camellya's case, it's a basic attack damage bonus. It gives a total of 70% basic attack damage bonus compared to the usual 48% of the respective damage bonus. So this weapon is particularly good for Camellya, making it a much better upgrade from free-to-play options than usual. It also has a crit rate substat of 24.3%, a base attack of 587, and 12% attack in the effects. The effects of a sword aren't good for any other sword users currently, since no one else wants basic attack damage bonus, but it is still a great stat stick with the crit rate substat and high base attack. But onto her other options, there are 3 other 5-star options, being Changli's Blazing Brilliance, the standard 5-star Emerald Genesis, and Brand's Unflickering Valor. Blazing Brilliance is actually a surprisingly close option to her signature, and you can't really go wrong with a standard 5-star weapon since they're usually always solid options. Emerald of Genesis is a particularly good one to choose from the strongbox since it can be used on every version of Rover and every other sword user. Compared to these options, the rest sort of have a steeper fall off and are all going to be pretty similar in terms of performance. So I'll go over my findings with the 5 weapons that I tested with Camellya to try to give you an idea of what you might want to go for. So as we can see here, I tested her signature weapon, Red Spring, Changli's Blazing Brilliance, Brand's Unflickering Valor, and the Samurai Anchor at R5, which was the free event weapon from the Kitty Cat event, and the Commando of Conviction at R5, which is a gacha weapon. Now, the Red Spring obviously did perform the best since it is her signature weapon, but the Blazing Brilliance Changli's weapon is actually surprisingly close, and Brand's Unflickering Valor isn't very great, but it does give basic attack damage bonus and 8% crit rate. It has a relatively low base attack for a 5-star weapon, but is still an option. And the Samurai Anchor is pretty much going to be her best option for free to play since it was a free R5. And the Commando of Conviction from Gacha, if you didn't get the kitty cat sword, is an amazing option for all sword users and is a great weapon to invest into. There is also the Battle Pass Looming Gloss, but it needs to be R5 to even be competitive with the other free to play options, and it doesn't have any crit stats, so honestly I wouldn't even bother with it unless it's R5, which is an insane ask, so just use one of the previous. All other attack 4-star options are slightly worse, so out of all of the 4-star sword options, the ones with the higher refinement will be the best, but I would still refrain from investing into those, as a Commando of Conviction at R5 will be an amazing option, and you'll be able to use it on every other sword user, excluding the support sword users that want the Overture. Camellya's teams are pretty straightforward, just like how she is with Rover.
Pleasure me with more power.
Sanhua is honestly going to be your best option because she has such low field time, gives a 20% attack buff with her S6, and a whopping 38% basic attack damage amp with her outro skill. Everyone else just doesn't bring that much value to her. Next is Rocha, who is a 5-star sub DPS that provides 20% havoc damage amp and 25% basic attack damage amp on her outro. Though with Rocha's increased field time and honestly not that great personal damage compared to Sanhua, and the fact that you need to pull for her when she's only really good in a Camellya team, she just doesn't bring enough value in my opinion to justify getting her at this point in the game. Lastly, there is Donjin, who provides a 23% attack havoc damage amp on outro and deals some pretty good damage for a 4-star unit, and she also has the same 20% attack that she gives the team at her S6. Her fill time is honestly pretty short since she is Concerto efficient, but it is slightly longer than Sanhua's, and her outro isn't as good as Sanhua's. I should mention Cantarella, but she, like Donjin, gives havoc damage amp on outro, though only 20% instead of 23, and skill damage amp, which Camellya doesn't care about since she scales on basic attack damage. Cantarella also wasn't made for Camellya, so they don't really synergize that well. You can definitely make it work if you want to, but like Rocha, she just doesn't bring enough value as a 5-star compared to Sanhua. Cantarella will be far better with the next Havoc DPS, so I would pretty much just use her for that. Onto Camellya's best support options, Shorekeeper is undoubtedly the best option for her since it really helps give her more overall damage, especially on her Concerto nuke, and the passive ability that she gives allows you to perfect dodge after you get hit, so it's pretty nice considering Camellya's poor movement mechanics. Farina is definitely viable, but you will probably struggle with her on the 2nd floor of the Hazard Tower, though Whimpering Waste is a great option. Another option would be Baiji, but she does take more field time and doesn't really give enough buffs to justify it. If you have Shorekeeper's signature weapon though, it does make her competitive with Farina, if you don't need the vastly shortened field time that Farina provides, that is. So I did some actual team testing in the previous Tower of Adversity where there aren't any buffs tailored towards Camellya, since I wanted to compare them to the current one where I figured there would be some basic attack damage bonus or something, but the current buffs are actually for Cantarella and not Camellya. I think it's really nice right now for a character to have some versatility since there aren't that many characters out right now. I think it's also important to consider how they'll perform when buffs aren't optimal for them, to look at their future longevity. Okay, now let's check out my team findings real quick. It was against the Thundering Memphis, which is the electro guy that teleports a lot, just like the other guy. So Baiji and Sanhua, the most free-to-play option I tested, had no issue clearing. Farina and Sanhua, slightly better. Farina's slightly shorter fill time and more team buffs were pretty helpful. Shorekeeper and Sanhua, which I think to be her best team, was pretty much the best time. Farina and Rocha, not that great. Rocha doesn't have anything to group here, so she kind of loses a lot of value here. Same here, better fill time with a better time with Shorekeeper, but still not that great. Farina and Dungeon, barely didn't clear. My dungeon isn't fully built yet, so she shouldn't have any issues clearing when she's fully built. Same here, Shorekeeper did make up for the dungeon not being fully built, but not that great. But could have had a better clear time. Verena and Cantarella did not clear. Cantarella isn't really fully invested yet during this test, but still isn't going to be that great even with more. And same thing with Shorekeeper, not that great. Shorekeeper Yinlin might have cleared, but I did have an Electro Res on the Thundering Memphis, so that did kind of like hinder Yinlin, but still not really the greatest option. Jeja and Shorekeeper can clear. I got tired of Thundering Memphis just teleporting out of my Shorekeeper ult, but given the course that I was on, definitely possible. Shorekeeper and Brant was actually pretty good. The shield that Brant gave was pretty comfy, and Shorekeeper Changli didn't clear. I mean, Changli just doesn't really synergize very well, but I just kind of wanted to try it. So yeah, most of these teams with like Cantarella and below, we're just kind of like trying to see if like you needed to like do something because you already used Sanhua or Rocha with somebody else, and honestly, they're not that great. I'd only really consider Brant and Jeja to be solid options. You could probably use Cantarella if you did with like other teammates, but I'm not really sure what you might want to do. But yeah, these are my team findings. Camellya is overall probably the most valuable DPS at the moment, since she is great in the Tower of Adversity and amazing in Whimpering Waste. The only other DPS character that comes close to being able to have that kind of value, in the same way at least, is Carlotta, but she is more single target focused with some AoE. I find Camellya to be fun to play in all types of content in the game currently, and if you want her, I don't think she'll be someone that you will regret pulling. Just make sure you like her gameplay by playing the trial a couple times. And that's everything I have for now. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.